You're listening to Smart Metals Radio from the Hard Assets Alliance.
Hello and welcome to the show with me, Andy Duncan, in London. Today my special guest is Matthew Hart in New York, who's an exploration journalist and the author of a recent book, Gold, The Race for the World's Most Seductive Metal. On the show today, we'll be discussing diamonds, gold, his book, and the mysterious Chinese gold mining industry. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Fantastic. Now, we'll get to gold in a minute, but you've spent lots of years in all sorts of different countries as a sort of Indiana Jones, and this included searching for diamonds in the Arctic and gold around Lake Superior and various other places. Are there any commodity rushes or mining locations that in your 30 years have particularly stood out?
Well, of course, it was the diamond discovery and diamond rush in the Canadian Arctic in the Northwest Territories, in what's called the Barren Lands of the Northwest Territories, was particularly interesting because, of course, a lot of people don't think, or rather it was kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people to think of diamonds as being in the Arctic. And in Canada, of course, it was a gold producer and all kinds of other metals, but not known for diamonds. And yet, that was exactly the place to look. Diamonds are usually found in on a part of the Earth's surface called Kraton, and that's where they're found in Siberia, very, very rich diamond fields in Siberia. That's where they're found in South Africa, and the great Botswana diamond pipes, the biggest diamond pipes in the world, the most valuable diamond pipes in the world in Botswana are located on the Kraton. It's just that there's an awful lot of sand that has to be got out of the way before you get down to this thick rock of the Earth's surface. So, yeah, I guess the diamond rush in the Canadian Arctic was one of the most exciting times because they staked an area into mining claims. They staked an area the size of Western Europe in about a year. It was a madhouse up there. Helicopters charging around, people posting these staking posts out of the helicopters, dropping them in the snow and registering the claims. So it was quite a party. I enjoyed it a lot.
I'm surprised nobody's made a movie of it, and I wish they'd find that kind of rock under my house. Now, getting to gold, there have been two major kind of gold rushes in the last 40 years. Now, we'll talk about the Lehman Brothers one in a few minutes, but in the first one, in the 1970s, gold went from its official conversion rate of $35 an ounce and then up to about $850, which is about $2,000 in today's money. This price then collapsed down to about $275 in 2001 when the British government sold off half of its gold stock. Can you tell us why you think gold in the 70s and 80s went up so high, and then why you think it collapsed so badly in the kind of 90s?
I don't know. It was a speculative bubble. It was just the hot thing of the moment, and it was, the price was just run up. I haven't studied it hugely, but I do believe that it's very, very different from the price rise today, if you want to get into that, because I think it was a much more stable. I think there were far more fundamental reasons for gold to have taken off in the recent bull run.
Now, in the recent bull run, we've had three kinds of periods. We've gone from about 2000, the year 2000, up to 2008. There was a steady climb from about $300 to $800. Then we had the Lehman Brothers collapse, which triggered a huge boom, which took gold all the way up to $1,900. And then since then, we've kind of grumbled down to about $1,275. Can you tell us why this kind of period of the last sort of 15 years has been so much different from the rise in the 1970s?
Well, because that 1970s rise was a real spike. It really was a bubble. But it just shot up, and then when the investors kind of looked around, there wasn't a good reason for it to be there, and the price collapsed. That's not what's happened now. What happened is that and you correctly identified the beginning as well before the Lehman Brothers collapse, 4 or 5 years before it, gold was already making important rises. The bull run had started. And I think the reason for that was a general failure of confidence in asset prices. overall. Equities were, many people thought they were suspicious of them being overpriced. These mortgage-backed securities, and kind of perhaps even a failure of belief in currencies. But at any rate, there was this steady rise in gold. Then in 2008, Lehman Brothers collapsed, and that kicks the afterburners on. Because all of a sudden, the stories start to multiply. It looks like more banks are going to fail. Currencies are in doubt. Countries, sovereign countries, are going to start failing and reneging on their debt. There was, if you'll recall, a kind of a sense of where are we going? Iceland. All this kind of, this panic is just this black hole of uncertainty opened beneath the financial world. There was a chaos and a sort of stampede. And in that stampede, gold loves fear. Gold loves the panic. And it feeds on it. And so I think what was a rational price rise took off. I don't say it took off irrationally. It's just that it gained a huge amount of energy that from the kind of feeling of calamity and of incipient disaster that seemed to be in the air. Remember, in Britain, the government nationalizing banks, they had to inject huge amounts of liquidity into these enormous banks like RBS to keep them afloat. And who would have predicted that? So it was as if you sort of kicked these great gilt-edged financial institutions, and there was nothing there. So this drove a huge amount of money into gold as a hedge against disaster. It's after all, its historical use. And yes, it's leveled off now quite a bit. It's come down to $1,250. I was asked by one interviewer why I thought the gold price had tanked. And I said, tanked? Remember where it started out? It started out at $300. I don't call $1,250 the gold price tanking. There are a number of reasons it settled back. Obviously, people aren't in as much of a panic now. They're more used to the program of quantitative easing at the Fed, and that seems to be easing up now. They're not printing as much money as they were. The bond buying program's been scaled back. So, for a number of reasons, the equity markets are stronger. They wobble a lot, but generally stronger than they were. So that takes a little of the luster off gold. But I think it'll lie low for a while and then probably have another day.
Now, if we listen to people like Doug Casey, possibly Peter Schiff and a few others, they describe us as being in the kind of eye of a hurricane and that we're about to go into the trailing edge of a hurricane. Do you think that that's true? And if we go into this trailing edge of a hurricane and we start seeing a lot more bank collapses and so on and bond bubble collapses, do you think gold will rocket up again?
You see, I don't know. And I don't have my book wasn't a prescriptive book. It described what I thought was the greatest gold rush, well, what definitely was the greatest gold rush in history, partly driven by the world that we were in, and a gold rush in which there was gold. We were basically ransacking the planet Earth for gold, drilling on every continent except Antarctica. And as to whether there will be another run-up of the same kind, I can easily believe there would be. I don't have that position as a sort of something that I've researched and stand by. I'm aware that a lot of people think it. I certainly don't find it completely unreasonable. Who would have predicted Lehman Brothers? Who would have thought that there's a bank too big to fail? So in this kind, like what happens if the developing countries just completely stall? And Europeans are not able to organize themselves around the euro to the degree that they ought to. I don't know. To me, sure, it's possible, but I think that even if you don't believe that gold will shoot up again, that we're in the eye of a hurricane, I think you could say that we're in gold is flat right now, and it might even go a little lower, but I don't think it's going to go hugely lower. And eventually, it will certainly have another run.
Now, your book describes this rush period between 2008 2011 when lots of people got into gold mining. You've researched a lot of these mines. You've actually been to a lot of these mines. What's your general impression about the global gold mining industry, and which of those mines really stood out for you?
Well, I guess, I mean, the various mines stood out for different reasons. The deep mines of South Africa stood out because they show the extent to which we will go to get gold, 2.5 miles down to mine a seam of gold 30 inches wide, but that was producing $1 billion a year, very close to $1 billion a year for AngloGold. That's the Mponeng mine. And I guess the most impressive mines for me were probably the big mines on the Carlin Trend, those kind of million-ounce a year mines. They're just, I like mines. I'm kind of a mine junkie, and they impress me. I find them, I just found them basically impressive. China was the biggest surprise for me because it's the biggest gold mining country in the world and biggest gold consuming country right now. They buy, first of all, they keep everything they mine. That's 370 tons a year. 370 tons is the official figure. I think it's much more. But 370 tons a year, plus they import on top of that. So they keep everything they mine. They don't export anything, and they import. So they really consume a huge amount of gold. Now, but let's just take their gold production. They produce this. They are the biggest gold-producing country in the world without a single large gold mine. They don't have one mine that in the West we would classify as a large gold mine. What they have are tens of thousands, and I'm not kidding, tens of thousands of small gold mines. Sometimes it's very, very small, just a few people running a small operation on a stream somewhere. But some of them, and I've seen them, are industrial scale illegal gold mines. Illegal gold mines. Many, many pirate mines in China. I saw one in Inner Mongolia that ran for about 5 miles along the river. And not only that, they had this big placer operation for 5 miles. So that's not secret. They're obviously paying somebody. There's some bribe is allowing them to operate in the open like that. But up in the hills nearby, they had open pit mining going. Open pit mining, illegal open pit mining. I mean, open pit mining is something you can do with a couple of guys with a shovel. You need big equipment, and they were cyanide heap leaching. So, how much of that gold actually appears in the United States Geological Survey figures that most of us use as sort of how much gold is trying to produce? They say 370 tons last year. Well, did they produce 370 tons last year, or 360, or whatever it is? Or did they produce 400 or 450? I think it's probably more like up there, because they're not reporting this other gold. It's refined illegally in the city of Baotou in illegal refineries, and it makes it into the stream. I guess it's not easy, or rather not difficult to sell it into the main gold purchasing stream. But so I don't know if we really understand what size the gold supply really is. China's a big, big factor. Most analysts think that People's Bank of China is buying way more bullion than they say they're buying. So God knows what they've got there. Is it 1,000 tons? I don't think so. I think it's way more than that.
Now, if they have all these small mines, there are reports that the Chinese government, the Bank of China, is actually paying more than $2,000 an ounce to get hold of this Chinese gold, which never appears on the world markets. Do you think that that's credible?
No, I don't think they have to pay more than the basically London price, more than the spot price. I don't see why they would be paying more than the spot price. There are places where people will pay a slight premium, but I don't think you would have to buy illegal gold in China. In fact, if anything, they would be able to get it perhaps at a slight discount.
Now, we're often told by Keynesians and Western central bankers that gold is a barbarous relic, even though they supposedly hold so much of the stuff. You've studied this a lot. Why do you think there is still this sort of idea of romance with gold mining, even in what you might call a sophisticated 21st century?
I just think gold is hardwired into the human brain as a valuable asset, as the original hard asset. You know, we didn't even realize the antiquity of man's fascination with gold until 1972, when a backhoe operator in the town of Varna on the Black Sea coast in Bulgaria accidentally unearthed a Neolithic tomb. He was actually he was working on the foundation for a small apartment building, and he unearthed this ancient tomb, and they sent for the archaeologists. They opened it up, and inside was this incredible treasure of beautiful, tiny gold artifacts. You can see it online yourself. Just go into Google and type in Varna necropolis gold or words like that, Varna, and you'll get all kinds of images of it. They dated this material and found it 6,000 years old. Well, that's Neolithic times. 6,000 years old is the very dawn of our civilization. It's before ancient Egypt. So as our civilization is just starting. We're making gold artifacts. Why? You can only speculate. There's no written record, so it's pre-literate, so we don't know why. But we can only guess that gold lasted forever. It never corroded. It was beautiful. It shone. It seemed to be eternal because it didn't rust in a world where everything crumbled and people didn't live very long. And it was easy to work into these beautiful objects. Somehow or other, that fascination stayed. And then, in 635 BC, gold money was invented. And from that day until Richard Nixon killed the gold standard, or what was left of the gold standard, gold was money. So it was this central element in our entire financial structure. So for these reasons, you know, when you see the coronation of the various monarchs, they're glittering in this absolutely spellbinding regalia of state. It stands for the dignity and the endurance of the state. And an awful lot of it is made of gold. So it just goes back a long way. And you can snort at it and sneer at it all you like. People just will always treasure it.
Which brings me on then to my final $64,000 question, Matthew. You obviously love gold mining, the process and everything, but do you yourself actually invest in gold?
No, I don't. I don't invest in gold. You know, it's funny because I'm not a gold bug, and yet I am a gold bug. Like I'm what my friends who are gold bugs, who are true gold bugs, say that they call me more a gold aficionado. They say you're really what we call a bit of a gold bug because you like gold and you're interested in gold, but you don't own any gold. No, I have, you know, my wife has gold jewelry and we have gold that way, but I don't, and I have bought gold mining shares in the past, but I don't have any right now, and I don't have any bullion. But I must say, I'm thinking about it because I think it's, to me, right now, it's probably on sale.
Okay, now, just before we go then, if there are any listeners who are interested in reading about your book, where's the best place where they can find out about it?
Oh, you can get it online or in any big bookstore. It's the big online retailers all have it. You can get it in Kindle. You can get it in audiobooks. You can get, as I say, major booksellers all have it. It's pretty well distributed in Canada and the United States and the United Kingdom and South Africa and Australia. Those are the main places it's been published so far.
I'll just remind everyone what it's called. It's Gold, the Race for the World's Most Seductive Metal, and that's by Matthew Hart. So it only remains for me to say, Matthew, thank you very much for your time today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Subscribe to the Smart Metals Radio Show on iTunes. You can also visit us online at hardassetsalliance.com/radio, where you can subscribe to our free mailing list and receive our free Smart Metals newsletter. For anyone who wants to set up an account with the Hard Assets Alliance, as a special offer, we shall be waiving opening and setting up fees. Listeners who'd like to speak to a live rep to walk through the registration process can call 1-877-727-7387. That's 1-877-727-7387. I'd like to thank Matthew Hart for joining us on today's show, and I'd like to thank you very much for listening. Until next time, goodbye.